My name is Dr. Edward, and I'm from the University of Sydney. Hello, Rishi. Well, that's a tough question. Well, the Viet Cong Rebellion, in which the rebels were fighting for South Vietnam to become one of the communist countries. But the Americans thought if the Vietnam became a communist, the idea of communism would come to America. Unlike World War I and World War II, each side were fighting for not for land, not for revenge, but for everyone to be a communist, which the Russians, Chinese, and the Viet Cong were fighting for, or the democratic, which the Americans were fighting for. Recently, one of my colleagues interviewed a civilian who lived in a village near Han Truan. Well, I can't calculate how many people have died, but the Viet Cong were estimating about 1.1 million Vietnamese troops and about 58,000 US troops were killed in action. 2.6 million civilian deaths. So around 5 to 7 million people died between 1955 to 1975. Okay. Well, World War I was about alliance and revenge. World War II was about the Germans, Japanese, and Italians trying to take over other countries. Although this was more about communists trying to make the world communism, the capitalists were doing pretty much the same. Well, no, we're estimating that the wars had the least amount of damage to civilians and military property, and also the least amount of deaths. But there have been a concern about that others wars will spark if.
Welcome to All News. Yesterday was April 30th, 1975, and was the end of the Vietnam War. Sadly, we have lost the Vietnam War after Viet Cong soldiers ambushed the last troops of Vietnam. So on this sad day, after about 5 million deaths that occurred, we will review the history of this horrific war. Here are some pictures of troops and battles of the Vietnam. Now, historian Dr. Edwards will tell you about the history of the Vietnam War.
My name is Dr. Edward, and I'm from the University of Sydney. Hello, Rishi.
Hello. I have a couple of questions for you. 1. What was the cause of the Vietnam War?
Well, that's a tough question. Well, the Viet Cong Rebellion, in which the rebels were fighting for South Vietnam to become one of the communist countries. But the Americans thought if the Vietnam became a communist, the idea of communism would come to America.
Very interesting. I've got 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
What was the difference between World War II and World War I compared to this war? Would you say this war was the worst that we've seen?
Well, no. We're estimating that the wars had the least amount of damage to civilians and military property, and also the least amount of deaths. But there have been a concern about that others wars will spark if form the capitalists versus the communists.
Thank you, Doc. So thank you and good night.
Well, everybody's heard about the bird. The bird's a winner. Well,